The concept of power is something that has received a lot of attention by noted philosophers such as Nietzsche and Sartre of recent memory. The Will to Power, Nietzsche's perhaps most memorable work, argues that mercy and compassion are signs of weakness, and that the strong should disdain these destructive attitudes and feelings and strive for one's own goals and aspirations. Bishop Robert Barron had an excellent video series breaking down both Nietzsche and Sartre, among others, which will be linked in the description below. Indeed, one sees examples of this all throughout the culture, permeating even many workplaces around the country. But before going any further, let's look at this from a different, more Catholic perspective. One of the truths that we know about God, one that is self-evident, is that He is all-powerful. But power is primarily not what God is. God, at the root of His being, is love, and the power that He wields exists in service to that. The Incarnation is the supreme example of power humbling itself to be of service to others. One could argue that mercy and compassion are stronger examples of power than anything else might be, as mercy, as anyone who has tried real mercy knows, is very difficult. Therefore, there has to be more to the social order, especially within the workplace, than simply a consideration of who is in possession of worldly power and who is not. Sometimes the one who seems foolish or weak possesses the power of God. It is not for nothing that St. Paul said, quote, "The foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength," unquote, in the 25th verse of his first letter to the Corinthians. And that brings us to the textbook that I have been reading this semester. The author, Mish, does not quote but expresses disbelief when he relates the story of one pastor who actually believes that the struggle for better working conditions by low-wage workers in a working home should be handled like marriage counseling. He maintains that if you put both parties in the room with a counselor, they can work out their differences. That's what he had to say. And the way that he phrased that is very interesting. Now, is it true that materially, employers today tend to have more power than, and therefore over, the people whom they employ? Yes. But why oughtn't it be the case that an employee and an employer could come together to work out a mutually beneficial working agreement between the both of them? Why must it be a mutually antagonistic relationship? The way Mish phrases it makes it sound as though individuals are incapable of working out and committing to a working agreement with their employer that the individual can agree to. It seems as though Mish does not have a good conception of what a just and fair workplace, where employer and employee mutually respect each other, should look like. Instead, he defaults to a show of force, either on the part of the employer by firing the employee or disciplining them, or by the employee by joining a union and forcing the employer to capitulate. When did the workplace become a war zone? Now, this pushback on my part is not to indicate by any stretch that unions on principle are wrong. Indeed, the reverse is true. If there are unjust working conditions and the employees are not succeeding with charity and rational conversation, then sometimes the best solution is a show of force. The Compendium of the Catholic Church maintains that unions, quote, while pursuing their specific purpose with regard to the common good, are a positive influence for social order and solidarity, and are therefore an indispensable element of social life, end quote. However, contrary to Mish, the compendium also emphasizes that relations within the world of work must be marked by cooperation, end quote. Then it quotes from St. Pope John Paul II from his encyclical letter Laborum Exercens, saying that unions, quote, should be seen as a normal endeavor for the just good. In the present case, for the good which corresponds to the needs and merits of working people associated by profession. But it is not a struggle against others, end quote. The point here is that in all things, Catholics are called to act with charity and to obey first principles. But in addition, we must work to ensure that our workplaces are both fair and just. Both individuals and unions have their place in that. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kevin with Crossing Out the I. God bless and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.